What happens when a late-night joke lands a little too close to the truth, and the man in the guest chair decides he's done playing along. The lights of the late show gleam like polished glass, warm and inviting on the surface, but beneath them hums a quiet electricity, the kind that crackles right before a storm. The audience laughs easily, unaware that tonight's rhythm is about to fracture. Ben Affleck sits across from Stephen Colbert, relaxed on the outside, one arm draped casually over the chair, a faint smile resting on his face. To the viewers at home, it looks like just another celebrity interview, another polished exchange, another safe night of entertainment. But something is already stirring. Before we go any further, if you love stories where Hollywood's masks slip and the truth breaks through, subscribe to Prime Tale right now, hit like, and drop a comment. You won't want to miss what's about to unfold. Stephen leans forward, cue cards stacked neatly in his hand, eyes bright with that familiar mix of charm and mischief. He's done thousands of interviews. He knows how to dance on the line between humor and discomfort. And usually, celebrities play along. They always do. Usually. Ben shifts slightly in his seat. It's subtle, a small movement most people would miss. But there's a tightness there, a coiling patience. Years in Hollywood have taught him how to sit through uncomfortable questions, how to laugh when he doesn't want to, how to turn pain into a punchline if that's what the room demands. Tonight, though, something feels different. He didn't come here to perform a version of himself. He came tired of the narratives, tired of the assumptions, tired of being the punchline in someone else's story. Stephen smiles. So, Ben, he begins lightly, you've had let's call it an eventful few years. The audience chuckles. Safe. Familiar. Ben smiles back, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. Eventful is one word, Ben says. Stephen nods, sensing an opening. You've been in the headlines a lot. Relationships, breakups, comebacks. People seem to have opinions. The laughter grows louder now. A ripple of anticipation moves through the crowd. This is the part they like. The personal stuff. The mess wrapped in humor. Ben exhales slowly through his nose. Inside, something tightens. He hears the echoes of photographers shouting his name, the click of cameras capturing his worst moments, the endless articles dissecting his private life like it's a public sport. He thinks about how often he's stayed silent, how often he's swallowed it down. Stephen continues, still smiling. Does it ever get exhausting being, well, Ben Affleck? The studio laughs again, but this time it's uneven. A few people glance at Ben, sensing the shift. He doesn't answer right away. The silence stretches just a second longer than expected. Long enough to feel it. Ben tilts his head, studying Stephen, not angrily, thoughtfully. Like he's deciding whether to open a door he's kept locked for years. Yeah, Ben says finally. It does. The laughter dies down quicker than usual. Stephen blinks, recalibrating. Because, he adds, trying to soften it, fame comes with the job. Ben nods once. Fame does. But the way people talk about you like you're not human, that's not part of the job description. A murmur moves through the audience. This isn't the rhythm they're used to. Stephen straightens slightly, still calm, still composed, but now listening more carefully. I think people forget, Ben continues, his voice steady but edged with something raw, that the stuff you joke about, that's someone's real life. Someone's kids. Someone's mistakes they already regret. The studio is quiet now. No laughter. No applause. Just attention. Stephen clears his throat, offering a half smile. I mean, comedy does hold a mirror up to society. Ben's eyes stay locked on him. It does. But sometimes it's a funhouse mirror. And the person on the other side doesn't get to walk away when the joke's over. A beat. Then another. Somewhere in the crowd, someone shifts uncomfortably. Cameras adjust angles, catching Ben's expression, open, unguarded, unfiltered. This isn't defensive. It's honest. Stephen nods slowly. Fair. Ben leans forward now, elbows resting on his knees. He hadn't planned to say this. He hadn't planned to go here. But once the words start, they don't stop. I've spent years watching people tell my story like they know it, Ben says. They see a headline and think they understand the whole thing. They don't see the work, the therapy, the nights you don't sleep because you're trying to be better than you were yesterday. The audience listens, rapt. Some faces soften. Others look stunned. Stephen opens his mouth, then closes it again, letting Ben continue. And I'll own my mistakes, Ben adds. I've made plenty, but I'm not a character. I'm not a meme. I'm not a cautionary tale for clicks. A few scattered claps break out, hesitant at first, then stronger. The energy in the room has changed completely. This is no longer an interview, it's a reckoning. Stephen finally speaks, voice quieter now. I didn't mean to cross a line. Ben nods. I know, but lines get crossed all the time because people think we don't feel it. He sits back, the moment hanging heavy between them. Stephen takes a breath, choosing his next words carefully. I appreciate you saying that. Ben offers a small, tired smile. I appreciate being able to. The applause grows louder now, genuine and sustained. But beneath it, something else lingers. A sense that the show has stepped into territory it can't neatly wrap up before the commercial break. As the cameras pull back and Stephen transitions awkwardly toward the next segment, social media is already waking up. Clips are being cut. Tweets are being typed. Viewers at home are leaning closer to their screens, realizing they just witnessed something rare, an unscripted moment where the mask slipped and the truth stared straight into the lights. And this is only the beginning. The applause fades, but the air never quite settles. Stephen Colbert adjusts the stack of cards in his hands, though he no longer needs them. The familiar rhythm of the show, jokes, laughter, easy transitions, has slipped off its rails. The band waits, uncertain. The audience remains alert, like witnesses who know they've just seen something they weren't supposed to see. Ben Affleck sits back, shoulders squared now, as if the words he let loose have rearranged something inside him. He feels lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because he finally said it. Heavier because once truth is out in the open, there's no pulling it back. Stephen offers a polite smile toward the camera, the practiced instinct of a host trying to regain balance. Well, he says, voice carefully neutral, let's talk about your new film. Normally, that would be the reset, the safe ground, the familiar escape hatch. But tonight, the floor is still warm from what just burned through it. Ben nods, but his eyes drift, not to Stephen, but to the audience. To the faces watching him with something closer to curiosity than judgment. He knows this moment won't disappear once the credits roll. He can already feel it spreading outward, faster than any PR team could contain. Stephen begins describing the movie, his tone upbeat, steering the conversation toward craft, process, art. Ben answers politely at first. Measured. Controlled. Then Stephen adds, almost casually, do you think the public will finally see a different side of you with this one? The word finally hangs there. Ben's jaw tightens, just a fraction. He looks back at Stephen. That depends, he says, on whether they're actually looking. A ripple of reaction moves through the crowd. Stephen raises his eyebrows slightly. What do you mean? Ben doesn't rush this time. He chooses his words like stones placed carefully across a river. I think people like the idea of change, Ben says. But they don't always like witnessing it. Because real change is messy. It's not a headline. It's boring, repetitive, uncomfortable. Stephen nods, listening. And when someone's been labeled a certain way, Ben continues, it becomes easier to keep them there. It's familiar. It's entertaining. A woman in the front row leans forward. A man near the aisle crosses his arms, thoughtful. Stephen offers a soft laugh. You're saying we prefer the old story. I'm saying, Ben replies, that some stories get recycled because they're profitable. The audience murmurs again. Not laughter, recognition. Stephen shifts in his seat. This is no longer a friendly sparring match. This is a conversation that brushes uncomfortably close to the machinery behind the show itself. As someone in media, Stephen says carefully, I try to balance entertainment with empathy. I believe that, Ben replies. But balance is hard when the crowd laughs louder at your lowest point. The words land. Heavy. Honest. Stephen's smile fades into something more serious. Do you feel like you've been reduced to that? Ben nods once. For a long time, yeah. Silence stretches again. The kind that feels louder than applause. Ben continues, voice lower now. I've watched interviews where my worst days are brought up like anecdotes. Where pain is framed as irony. And I've gone along with it, because that's what you do. You smile. You play the role. You don't make things uncomfortable. He looks around the studio. Until one day, you realize staying quiet is more uncomfortable than speaking up. The crowd erupts into applause, stronger this time, more confident. Stephen lets it happen, hands folded, absorbing the moment. When the noise dies down, Stephen nods. That's fair, he says. And for what it's worth, I think a lot of people see the effort you've made. Ben exhales, a slow release of tension. I hope so. But even if they don't, I still have to live with myself. That's the part people forget. Stephen smiles gently. That's a good place to be. Ben chuckles softly. It took a while to get there. The band plays a brief, tentative sting, testing the waters. Stephen glances toward them, then back to Ben. You know, Stephen says, this is more serious than I usually get before midnight. The audience laughs, finally a release. Ben smiles too, but there's still gravity in his eyes. Yeah, sorry about that. No, Stephen says quickly. Don't be. This matters. That admission hangs in the air. A host acknowledging the weight instead of brushing past it. They continue talking about acting, about directing, about fatherhood. But everything is colored now by what's already been said. Each answer carries subtext. Each pause feels intentional. Ben talks about his kids, his voice softening. They don't care about box office numbers, he says. They care about whether I show up, whether I listen. A few audience members nod. Someone wipes their eye. Stephen listens closely. Has being a parent changed how you handle criticism? Ben lets out a quiet laugh. Absolutely. Because when you go home and your kid asks you why people are saying things about you online, that changes the math. Suddenly, it's not just about you anymore. The room stills. Stephen swallows. That's heavy. It is, Ben agrees. And it's real. As the segment nears its end, the producer's countdown flashes silently off camera. 30 seconds. 20. Stephen turns slightly toward the camera. We're almost out of time. Ben nods, understanding. Stephen pauses, then looks back at Ben, not as a host, but as a person. I'm glad you said what you said tonight. Ben meets his gaze. So am I. The applause rises again as Stephen thanks him, the band playing them out. Ben stands, shakes Stephen's hand. It's firm, mutual, respectful. As Ben walks off stage, the audience remains standing longer than usual. Something about tonight feels different. He disappears behind the curtain, heart still racing. Backstage, assistants buzz around him, whispering, phones already in hand. Someone murmurs, that was intense. Another says, you're trending. Ben nods absently, grabbing his jacket. He knows what's coming next. Out in the world beyond the studio walls, clips are exploding across screens. Captions read, Ben Affleck gets real. Unfiltered moment shocks late night. Colbert caught off guard. Comment sections ignite. Some praise his honesty. Others accuse him of being too sensitive. The familiar divide forms instantly. Ben steps into his car, the door closing with a soft thud that cuts off the noise of the city. For a moment, he sits in silence, staring out the window. He doesn't regret it. But he also knows this conversation isn't over. Because when someone finally stops playing the role everyone expects, the reaction is never quiet. And the loudest voices are just getting started. By morning, the internet has already decided what the moment meant. Ben wakes to the soft buzz of his phone vibrating against the nightstand, over and over again, like a nervous pulse. Messages stack up faster than he can read them. His publicist, his manager, friends, a cousin he hasn't spoken to in years. Even an old director from a different life, texting just 2 words, saw it. He sits up slowly, rubbing his face, the weight of the night pressing back in. For a brief, fragile second, he considers not looking, pretending the world hasn't already taken his words apart and stitched them into something else. But that's never really been an option. He scrolls. Clips of the interview dominate every platform. Not the whole conversation, never the whole thing. Just fragments. His pause before answering. The line about funhouse mirrors. The moment the laughter died. Headlines scream their own versions of the truth. Ben Affleck snaps at Stephen Colbert. Affleck can't take a joke. Late night turns serious as actor lectures host. He exhales sharply, jaw tightening. This right here, is exactly what he meant. Across town, Stephen Colbert is already at his desk, glasses perched low on his nose, scanning the same headlines with a furrowed brow. He's done this long enough to know how narratives form. He recognizes the machinery at work, the way nuance evaporates in favor of friction. He watches the clip again, this time without an audience, without studio lights softening the edges. Just 2 men, one asking, one answering, both caught in a moment bigger than they intended. Stephen leans back, hands clasped behind his head. Damn, he murmurs to himself. That's not what happened. But intention has never been the loudest voice online. By noon, the debate has split cleanly down the middle. One side praises Ben's honesty, calling it brave, overdue. The other dismisses him as defensive, thin-skinned, unable to laugh at himself. Commentators pile on. Panels discuss his tone. Body language experts freeze frame his expression, drawing conclusions from the angle of his shoulders. Hashtags trend. Opinions harden. Ben sits in his kitchen, coffee going cold in his hand, watching a pundit on TV say, "If you're famous, this is what you sign up for." He laughs once, short and humorless. "Funny," he mutters. "I don't remember signing that contract." His phone rings. He doesn't need to check the screen to know who it is. "Yeah," he answers. "Okay," his publicist says immediately, voice clipped but controlled. "We need to talk strategy." Ben closes his eyes. "I figured. Some outlets want statements. Others want follow-ups. A few are framing it as you attacking comedy." Ben opens his eyes, staring at the window. "I didn't attack comedy." "I know," she says. "But perception is doing its thing," Ben finishes. A pause. "Are you okay?" That question lands differently. Ben considers it. "Yeah," he says slowly. "I am. I'm just not interested in apologizing for telling the truth." Another pause, longer this time. "That's going to limit our options." "Good," Ben says. She exhales. "All right." Then we lean into authenticity. Across the city, Stephen is in rehearsal, but his mind keeps drifting back to that moment on stage. The silence, the shift, the look in Ben's eyes when the laughter stopped. During a break, one of his producers approaches carefully. "You seeing the reaction?" Stephen nods. "Hard to miss. Do you want to address it tonight?" Stephen hesitates. Addressing it would feed it. Ignoring it would look like avoidance. He knows the dance. "I don't want to turn it into a joke," he says finally. "That would miss the point." The producer studies him. "So sincerity?" Stephen smiles wryly. "That might shock people even more." Back online, the conversation grows louder, sharper. Fans dig up old interviews, looking for patterns. Critics resurface past mistakes, reframing them as evidence. Supporters counter with clips of growth, of accountability. Ben watches it all like someone standing outside their own house while strangers argue about what kind of person lives inside. In the afternoon, his daughter pads into the room, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad," she says, cautious but curious, "why are people talking about you on my phone?" Ben's chest tightens. He sets the coffee down and turns fully toward her. "What did you see?" She shrugs. "Just videos. You talking. People saying stuff." He nods slowly. "Did you watch it?" She hesitates, then nods. "And?" he asks gently. She thinks for a moment. "You didn't seem mean," she says. "You just seemed tired." The word hits harder than any headline. Ben swallows. "That's pretty accurate." She gives a small smile. "I'm glad you said something." He pulls her into a hug, holding on a second longer than usual. In that moment, the noise fades. Later that night, Stephen steps back onto his stage. The applause greets him, as always, but there's an undercurrent now, a collective awareness that something unscripted has seeped into the show's bloodstream. He launches into the monologue, careful, sharp, but halfway through, he pauses. "You know," he says, setting the cards aside, "sometimes a conversation goes places you don't expect." The audience quiets instantly. "And sometimes," he continues, "that's not a bad thing." He doesn't name Ben. He doesn't replay the clip. He simply lets the acknowledgement exist. The crowd applauds, not wildly but thoughtfully. Back at home, Ben watches the clip later, alone. He nods once, appreciative. The storm hasn't passed. If anything, it's still gathering strength. But something has shifted beneath it. This isn't just about a joke anymore, or an interview, or a late-night moment gone sideways. It's about who gets to control the story. And in the middle of the noise, Ben realizes something quietly powerful. For the first time in a long time, he's not afraid of how this ends. Because the truth is already out there. And once it's spoken, it doesn't belong to anyone else to rewrite. Not anymore. The days that follow don't slow down, they intensify. By the end of the week, the interview has escaped the orbit of late-night television and entered something larger, heavier. It's no longer just entertainment news. It's cultural commentary. Opinion columns dissect it like literature. Podcasts argue about it for hours. Clips are replayed in classrooms, in newsrooms, in living rooms where people point at the screen and say that's exactly how it feels. Ben Affleck walks through it all with an unexpected calm. He stopped doom scrolling, stopped reading every headline. He knows now that the internet doesn't want resolution, it wants reaction. And he's done feeding it. Instead, he focuses on the mundane. School drop-offs, scripts on the kitchen counter, a quiet jog in the early morning when the city hasn't fully woken up yet. But even in silence, the echoes follow him. At a cafe, a stranger catches his eye and nods, not starstruck, not invasive, just respectful. Another man mouths the words "thank you" without sound. A woman presses her hand to her chest and smiles like she's been seen. Ben feels it then, the shift he couldn't measure before. Not universal approval. Not redemption. Something rarer. Recognition. Meanwhile, the media machine keeps spinning, but it's struggling now. The old angles feel thin. Affleck, too sensitive, doesn't stick the way it used to. Because too many people recognize the look in his eyes. The exhaustion. The restraint finally breaking. A long-form article drops midweek, written not as an attack, but as reflection. It opens with a simple line. What if we stopped demanding celebrities bleed for our amusement? The piece goes viral in a quieter way, shared thoughtfully, bookmarked, discussed. Stephen Colbert reads it late one night, glasses off, screen dimmed. He sits with it longer than he expects to. He thinks back to the moment again. The silence. The realization that the audience wasn't uncomfortable because Ben had said something wrong, but because he had said something true. On the next show, Stephen doesn't joke about it. He doesn't reference ratings. He does something riskier. He speaks plainly. There's a temptation in media, he says to the audience, voice measured, to pretend moments are disposable, that they end when the camera cuts. But sometimes the conversation keeps going, whether we want it to or not. The audience listens. No laughter. No need for it. And when someone tells you who they are, he continues, the respectful thing is to believe them. Applause rises, steady and sincere. Backstage, a young staffer tells Stephen, "My dad texted me about that interview. Said it made him think." Stephen smiles softly. Good. For Ben, the real aftermath doesn't arrive through headlines. It arrives through conversations. An old friend calls. "I should have said this years ago," the voice says. "I'm proud of you." A director reaches out, not with a role, but with a thank you. You articulated something a lot of people feel, but don't know how to say. Even critics soften. Not all of them, never all, but enough to matter. Enough to feel like the ground has shifted a few inches in a better direction. One night, Ben sits alone on his porch, city lights flickering in the distance. He thinks about the younger version of himself, the one who laughed along because it felt safer. The one who thought strength meant endurance, not honesty. He realizes something then. The unfiltered response didn't change how people see him. It revealed how they already did. And that clarity, painful as it is, feels like freedom. Weeks later, when the frenzy has cooled into memory, the interview still circulates. Not as scandal. As reference. A clip people return to when conversations turn toward empathy, accountability, and the cost of public life. It becomes a moment that outlives the outrage cycle. And somewhere in that permanence, something unexpected happens. The audience grows quieter, more attentive. They start listening, not just to celebrities, but to each other. Because once someone stands under bright lights and says, "I'm human," please remember that, it becomes harder to pretend we didn't hear it. The night of the interview fades into history, but the impact lingers, subtle, persistent, real. Ben Affleck didn't win an argument. He changed the temperature of the room. And that might be the most powerful thing anyone can do. Now it's your turn. What did you feel watching that moment unfold? Did Ben cross a line or finally draw one? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let the conversation continue. And if you want more explosive, emotional, cinematic stories where Hollywood's polished surface cracks and the truth steps into the light, subscribe to Prime Tale right now. Because the moments that matter most are the ones that can't be scripted.